Hey everybody, welcome back to another NHL Trade Talk podcast. My name is Jim Parsons here with NHLTradeTalk.com. And as we had last week, we've got the same guests back with us again, Kyle Odlin and Vivek Kalia, both from NHL Trade Talk as well. Kyle, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, thanks.
Good.
Doing
Appreciate you
great.
having coming back on, Vivek, and you.
I'm good as well. Thank you for having me back.
Right on. So we're getting a chance to do another one a week after the first one, which, as people might know, we had a couple little recording glitches. We're going to work on that today and see if we can get a little smoother as we work through this. But today is going to be all about leftovers in the NHL. So we've talked last week a lot about what happened, some of the moves, the signings, the trades, what's going on there. But today we're going to talk about what hasn't really happened yet, some of the things we expected to go that haven't gone yet. So let's start with Cutter Gauthier out of Anaheim. This is an interesting developing story because we knew there was going to be some fallout from the Leo Carlsson offer sheet. The immediate one was that Cutter Gauthier was going to probably demand a lot more money than he was originally probably going to get paid. Coming off a 41-goal season with the Ducks, he is a sniper. He shoots like crazy. He scores a lot, and he now wants his money. So, Kyle, I'm going to start with you. What do you make of this whole thing? The last we've heard is that it's kind of, we don't know officially that it's been turned down, but we believe a 4-year deal at $13 million per season was offered by the Ducks, and he said no, and so he wants more, which doesn't actually surprise me considering that Carlson got 18. What do you make of this whole situation?
Yeah, I mean, I guess last week on the podcast we kind of talked about. I brought up the AJ Greer signing from the offseason that kind of threw a wrench in their plans. So, I mean, the turning down of the 13 doesn't surprise me. I mean, he just saw his GM end up paying Carlson 18. So, and I mean, he scored 41 goals, and that's more than Carlson had. So, he's probably looking somewhere in that 15 to 16 range, but it's going to be interesting because they're going to have to trade one of their players that I think they want to keep, like the Troy Terrys of the world, makes 7 mil. There's Killorn, Kreider, one of those guys is going to probably have to get moved out, which makes it really difficult because they can't really afford to move anyone on defense because they're really struggling back there. They just signed Minchikov for a big ticket, so they kind of need both him and Lacombe to stay, and they're the only ones that make any really big money back there. So, and they're not probably going to move on from Dostal because then their goaltending looks a little off. So, yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what they do because they're going to have to move someone to make this all work. And I don't think Gauthier's one that's just going to give in and say, you know what, okay, I'll take the discount for you because he's never really been that type, forcing the trade out of Philly initially and stuff. So I can't see it happening here. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they end up doing to fit him in because they really need him. They can't afford him sitting out.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they can afford to pay him what he's probably going to be asking
Yeah.
for either, right? Like, Anaheim's an interesting one because they were loaded with cap space, and then this Carlson thing happened, and now they're really struggling. They signed a bunch of people. They've got to get Gauthier done. They only have $9 million in cap space. He wants 13, or he wants way more than 13. And like you said, he's got a rep now, right? He said I'm built to be a Flyer, and then ditched the Flyers, right? And now he's in Anaheim, and he wants his money. And what it looks like, this kind of player is really kind of all about what he can maximize his dollar value for. So it's not like he's going to be looking at a team-friendly deal that's going to allow the Ducks to keep anybody else. Vivek, what do you think of this? Is Cutter Gauthier the kind of person that the Ducks are going to have to figure out how to sign, or maybe dump if they can't get this figured out?
Well, if I were the Anaheim Ducks itself, Pat Verbeek, I would try to negotiate. Obviously, the 13 million is a dollar number that he's not happy with. I would try to negotiate 14, 15. If that still isn't a dollar number that he's not happy with, I'd dump him itself. Because if you're tight with well, if you pay two guys, Leo Carlson 18, and then you pay Gauthier close to that, that's over 30 million on committed with two guys. You can't really build a team like that. Itself. Even though we do know that the salary cap's increasing itself, but I'll try to get as much value as I can with him. This could be a similar situation for what we saw a few years ago happened with Swayman, Jeremy Swayman itself. His negotiations went all the way into training camp itself, so we could see something like that. He could, go into maybe sign a 1-year deal. It's similar to what Jason Robinson did as well. So it could similarly be like that, but I would dump him.
Yeah, I don't know what you're going to do with him. I mean, obviously he can score. He's a really good winger, and he is a winger. We got to remember
Yeah.
that, right, too? The demand for wingers is not as high as centers. there's going to be a team that wants him, but if you're going to trade for him, you have to know that you're going to be signing up for 15, 16 million bucks a season at a minimum, right? This is what the player is going to be asking for, and so you have to be prepared to pay that for this player. That'll be interesting to see how many teams go, okay, yeah, we're willing to do that for a player like this, or no, we're not really. Let's just see if he's really as sticky as we think he is, and his track record shows that he might be that stubborn. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens in Anaheim, because this is a good young team, but if they lose Gauthier, like, they're not nearly as good as they were projected to be, and they lost, like you said, Kyle, all those pieces on defense. So they've got to sort of round that out, figure that out. They really could use another right-handed defenseman on that team. I heard there was some talk that maybe Dylan Larkin. Maybe we'll get to that in a little bit, but I don't see that trade. I don't imagine the Red Wings and Gauthier being a fit, or Larkin choosing Anaheim.
I don't think Larkin wants to go to Anaheim.
Yeah,
either.
you know what I mean? Like, I don't see
Yeah.
that happening. So that'll be an interesting one. But let's move into the Dylan Larkin situation. Right now, it's at a total standstill. We heard there was a lot of talk. He wanted to trade out of Detroit. Didn't get along with Steve Yzerman, but Steve Yzerman is now gone. And there's there's going to be a new GM. We don't know who yet. Sean Horkoff is filling in, but apparently he doesn't have the authority to make trades. So there's really nothing cooking in Detroit right now. We don't know where Larkin's going to wind up. Vivek, I'll start with you. We've heard Minnesota. That's maybe the most likely trade destination. They're very keenly interested in him, but nothing's happening right now. So if you're Detroit, are you urgently trying to get this done? If you're other teams, are you waiting to see what happens? Like, where do you sit on this Larkin situation?
Well, if I'm Detroit, I'm going back to him and I'm trying to get him to expand his teams. I know he given a short list of teams, 3 teams, and so I'll get him to increase that from 3 to 5. I believe Dallas was also interested in him as well, so that could be a situation where we can maybe see something going on. But I definitely would try to get it done as soon as possible, and rather it not be a distraction going into the season itself, and it's just better for both parties to kind of move on itself. Detroit also needs to hire a GM too. They need to get that as well. So it's a lot of things happening in Detroit there.
Yeah, it's sort of chaos without any action happening in Detroit right now, right? Like, nobody knows what's going on, but nothing's actually happening. They've got contracts to sign. They've got things to do. They're a bubble team, if that. Like, we don't even know if they're going to be good enough to be a playoff spot. I can understand why Larkin is looking for a fresh start, but I can understand why Detroit just doesn't want to give him away. And though, and Kyle, like in Minnesota, where the Guerin really wants him, they've got that whole Quinn Hughes thing going on that we talked about last week. So they really need a player like Larkin. So they're sort of anticipating, like, what's going to happen. What are we going to do here? What do you make of this? Are you thinking he's going to get traded? Is there any possible chance he goes back to Detroit?
I think there is a chance he goes back to Detroit. They might try and come to him with open arms and at least ask him to stay until they find a suitable trade. But it's interesting there because apparently they had a deal on the table for Anthony Mantha to bring him back there, but then didn't give Horkoff the go-ahead ticket. Now Mantha signs elsewhere. And you got to think that they're under a lot of pressure there because the Siders of the world, I don't think, are going to keep staying there and keep doing this year after year. They've missed the playoffs multiple years in a row. They're struggling. That's kind of why Larkin wants out. But a lot of the teams that Larkin says he wants to go to don't want to give up what Detroit wants back, because apparently they want a first line center back. But Larkin is a first line center, but he's not that stud center. I don't think they're going to get that back. Yeah. So it's kind of a weird thing of what they're asking versus what they see him as. So Minnesota to me makes the most sense because Guerin wants to do everything he can to keep Hughes, keep him happy. They're good buddies. I can see something with Ryan Hartman kind of going back in a trade there. He's kind of on like the third line there in Minnesota. They have that Urov, who could be first or second line center. They have Eriksson Ek. So Larkin could fit in there nicely and give Urov the third line as a younger player. So I could see a trade centered around that. And that's kind of the only one on the table I can see. I mean, people have talked about him to Anaheim for Gauthier, and then Detroit throws in, Axel Sandin Pellikka or something like that, like a young defenseman for Anaheim. But I don't think Larkin's going to go to Anaheim. So, I mean, they have the cap space to sign Gauthier, but if Larkin says no, I don't want to go there, then it doesn't really matter anyways. So, in the end, I think if I had to predict it, I would guess he's going to Minnesota, but it's it's so hard to tell right now, especially without a GM there. So
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, I can understand why Detroit doesn't want to just give him away, because you can't
yeah,
really get this trade wrong. They're not going to win the trade. And like you said, if they want a first line center back, then why is that team making that trade in the first place? If they have a first line center, what do they need Larkin for? And
yeah,
so at the very least, Detroit's going to get a lesser center. Like that's, and then maybe you throw in a sweetener or something. I don't know what they're doing, but they don't
yeah,
have a GM to decide, right? They have no.
yeah,
They've got an owner, but who knows if Illich is calling anything. So it's like, yeah, it's really weird what's going on there, and it's hard to tell if the bridges have been burned in Detroit, right? With Yzerman gone,
yeah,
you might think Larkin's be like, okay, well, my problem is not there anymore, but he's not gone. He's still within the organization. He's just not really serving an active role on a day-to-day thing. He's still around though, so maybe that's
yeah,
why Larkin's kind of like, nope, that's not good enough. If he was gone, maybe I'd be coming back, but he's not. So I don't know what's going on in Detroit. It's just a really weird situation.
yeah.
Speaking of weird, Connor Hellebuyck. So we thought he was going to Buffalo around the draft. It looked like there was a trade on the table, and then nothing was happening. All of a sudden, there's no talk at all. Connor Hellebuyck is probably not moving on. He's going to maybe stay in Winnipeg, but we don't know for sure if the Jets are still willing to trade him. We know the pieces that were going to come back from Buffalo are no longer there because the draft is come and gone. Kyle, what do you think of the Hellebuyck situation? Do you think he stays in Winnipeg? Does he get traded?
I still think he gets traded. It just there's too much smoke around it. I think Buffalo's gonna revisit it. I can see a deal somewhere in the UPL and the Jack Quinn kind of Winnipeg. There's also Peyton Krebs there who makes 4.5. He could be another option to go back. Um, but yeah, I still think Buffalo's going to come back around to it because they're under so much pressure again this year to keep what they did last year and make last year not a flash in the pan one-off season where they finally turned it all around. So I still think they're going to revisit that in September and probably push for that. And then the Jets still have Skinner, and then they could have UPL as a tandem with Skinner. So I think that could work out well for the Jets in the end. But I can't see him staying after everything that's happened.
What about you, Vic? Do you think he's going to wind up being traded? And if so, where do you figure he goes?
I agree as well. I don't see a scenario where he stays. Um, yeah, much like Cal talked about, I think Buffalo just makes the most sense, just because of kind of what they did last year. They were able to go on that run and then make the playoffs and have a semi-deep run as well. So I think that's intriguing to me. If I'm Hellebuyck itself, so I would want to go there. New Jersey could be an interesting place as well. Just with the history with the Hughes, they've played Team USA together as well. So I think so that would be a team that I would look at. But I just don't see a scenario where he returns to Winnipeg itself, unless Winnipeg is able to turn it around um, itself. But I don't see that as a likely scenario
Yeah,
itself.
I don't know who they're going to be adding to all of a sudden just be better, but they were the
Yeah,
President's Trophy winners like the year before
Yeah.
last, and then they were not good at all last season. My sleeper pick's Carolina. That's where I think Hellebuyck might wind up. I thought originally that was a team that could be in the mix, and then all this talk to Buffalo sort of squashed that. But I mean, Carolina could use a goaltender. They're the reigning Stanley Cup champions. Why would you not want to go there, right? Like, yes, it's maybe not in the top 5 of the destinations to live and play, but I mean, there's really nothing wrong with playing in that city. And when you're playing on a team like that, um, there's lots of good reasons to go there, right? They're a good team. They're always a good team. You put him in the mix. I mean, they're probably, if not already, the definite favorites to win the Stanley Cup. So that would be
Yeah.
my pick. But I'm with you guys. I don't know that he goes before the season starts. My guess is he'll start in Winnipeg, and then depending on how things go, they'll start looking at a trade pretty quickly. But I do see that happening. Vivek, I'll start with you on the Morgan Rielly front. We talked a little bit about him last week. We know Toronto's decided to hang on to him, which makes a little sense because they didn't really find a trade partner in Anaheim or San Jose, and those options are not on the table anymore. He's a minute-munching defenseman, so as much as people in Toronto complain about him, he's still a big part of that team. So if you move him, you got to find somebody to replace him, which they don't have. What do you think happens with Morgan Rielly? He talked just recently about how he's glad he's still there. Sounds like he was ready to go, but he's glad that he wasn't moved. He wants to stay there. He wants to win there. Where do you see this going? Do you think this is a player who gets traded or stays put?
I think I think we'll see him get traded eventually. Depending on where, again, I think it depends on where and how the Leafs do as well. That all determines everything. But I think it's a similar situation of Nurse and Edmonton, where I think it's just a change of scenery that's needed for both sides, and which is why we heard San Jose in the mix as well, because they were in on both players and ultimately went with Nurse in that direction itself. So they'll start the season with him, of course, and maybe see how his chemistry is with Radish, and because we assume that he's going to be playing on the top pairing with Radish, or at least on the top four, and so maybe that it turns his game around as well, and so it could be a scenario where he turns, he is able to kind of reinvent himself through that sense and stays. But I do see him being traded, before the deadline, or at least on the deadline as well, and I don't see him staying in the Canadian market. I just see him going playing in the States.
Yeah, what
So
about Kyle? You agree with that? Do you think he's going to be moved? And obviously, probably not before the season starts, but something would have to come out of left field on that one. But what about the trade
Yeah.
deadline? Do you see him as a player that they shop around and maybe ultimately trade?
Yeah. Actually, I could almost see him getting moved before the season. The team I'm looking at is Pittsburgh.
Okay.
So Kyle Dubas, knows him well. Obviously, he was his GM for many years. Pittsburgh does not have a lot of lefty. Their number one lefty right now is Sam Girard. They have just under 11 mil in cap space, so fitting in that 7.5 of Rielly actually kind of makes sense. I think Declan Carlisle is their second line lefty, so they could really use another lefty on that team. And then if Dubas' familiarity, I could see that kind of coming to fruition. I mean, I don't think Toronto's going to get back very much, um, but they might just be happy with getting the salary taken back. And I think Dubas is one of the guys that might on and see the value there, given like they have the extra cap space. They're going to want to still try and push and compete with Crosby there for who knows how much longer until he retires. So that's a team I could see coming out of left field and kind of getting him on that kind of bubble to compete. Because if they wait too long, then it'd be tough also for Toronto to move him, especially if he's having a pretty good season. So, yeah, I could see Dubas and the Pens being interested in that.
It'd be very interesting to see if John Chaika takes an opportunity to make a splash, right? Like, yeah, he chose to keep Morgan Meyerly now, but I mean, if you're trading with Pittsburgh, for example, I don't know, is Erik Karlsson in the mix there at some point? Maybe if you're going to Anaheim and he
And then
wanted to go
too.
to that team originally, the only trade that makes sense is somehow Cutter Gauthier coming to Toronto. Would he want to do that? And then you got a lot of salary that you're talking about. And then you get into the whole mix again of like the core 4 or 5, but you got Cutter Gauthier making $16 million in does he look at Toronto differently? Does he take less to play there? Does he want more? Like, does Toronto give him? Like, it'd be a very interesting situation if they could work that trade out. And obviously, Cutter Gauthier for Morgan Rielly is not a straight across trade. You'd have to be looking at other pieces going to Anaheim in that deal. But, would Anaheim like him? Sure. Would Toronto like Cutter Gauthier? Yes. Right? Like, why would they not? So it could be very interesting if all these problems don't work themselves out. Like if the Cutter Gauthier thing gets really messy, which it sort of looks like it might get that way, and the Morgan Rielly thing, they want an upgrade or whatever. But if you move Morgan Rielly for a forward, then you need somebody to take Morgan Rielly's minutes, and they don't have that. So, yeah, it's interesting. I think right now he stays put. I wouldn't be shocked at all if he plays the season out, to be honest. But we'll hear more about this again. Like not a single summer goes by where they're not talking about a Morgan Rielly trade. So, and his contract every year is not looking like a total albatross anymore, right? People in Toronto don't seem to like it, but his money's not that bad when you consider
that 7.5 is not. It's not terrible anymore.
No, when all these players are making like 9-10 million, like just average players at this point. So 7 point something is no big deal. All right, last topic for today. We'll start with Kyle on this one. We're going to go with odd rumors. And the reason we've had this as a topic is because for whatever reason this week, maybe it's just the slow time of the summer, and everybody's looking for stories and they're just stretching for stuff or throwing it out there to see what sticks and gets viral, But there's been a lot of rumors that we've been hearing about, Crosby to Montreal, McDavid to a few handful of teams, John Cooper to Toronto, like all these really random things that have been coming up here lately that we all know probably aren't legitimate rumors of any kind, but people just are talking about them for some strange reason. So I'm going to let you pick first. Of all the weird rumors that you've heard this week, what is the one that you've kind of caught your attention that seems the strangest to you?
I mean, I'll tackle the McDavid one. Obviously, being in Edmonton, we hear about these rumors of where McDavid's going to go, where he's going to end up, and of course, Toronto's always up there saying he's going to go back to Toronto. But then the Philly ones have kind of come out of nowhere over this offseason. I think it started from a Philly journalist out there that kind of threw stuff against the wall to see if it would stick, and it keeps getting kind of brought up that it's going to be Philly or New York or Detroit, which McDavid's total goal, we've always heard it, is he wants to win. It doesn't really matter. I don't think he cares where he plays. He wants to win the cup. That's the only thing. And Edmonton, of those three teams, is definitely the closest to winning the cup. I mean, other than last season, they were in the cup final 2 years in a row. So Philly, I just can't see them being a legit option. Detroit, they don't even have a GM. I can't see that being a legit option. And then the Rangers, the only thing is because it is New York. It is the hub of the league. I can see that being a fit, and I think New York would move everything they could to make that fit. And of course, McDavid going to a team kind of turns them into a competitor. But there's some of these rumors where he's going to go that, one, he just signed the 2 years on a discount in Edmonton, and in the end, I think he's going to stay here. But hearing some of the teams that are being thrown out there, especially with their, chance to win the cup in the near future, it's just kind of funny to me reading these rumors and seeing them online and seeing fan bases get excited over something that I think is pretty far-fetched.
Well, interestingly or ironically enough, it was EJ Hradek from NHL Network who
Yeah.
said both things. He said, here's the three teams I'm hearing. Oh, and McDavid really wants to win. So it's like the same guy is sharing the same story about three teams that he might go to, but none of those three teams are contenders right now.
Yeah, they don't really line up there.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird thing to have the same person report. It kind of contradict himself during that thing.
Yeah.
So that's how you know it's a kind of a wild one, right? And like you said, there's no indication right now at all that McDavid is looking to leave. Now, if this season goes sideways, the Babcock thing doesn't work out, or Edmonton's really not that good, or whatever, you never know, right? It's all on the table at that point. But right now, he's the major reason that Babcock is there. So he's committed to Edmonton, right? Like, he's going to try to see this thing through, see how it goes, and then we'll see. Yeah. But, yeah, there's no indication at all that he's looking to go anywhere. So it was an interesting one to get thrown out there. Okay, Vivek, your turn. Are you sticking with the McDavid one, or are you going with a different one?
I'll go with a different one.
Okay.
I think one that's interesting is Jeff Merrick bringing up John Cooper to Toronto. That one, to me, makes absolutely no sense since Jim Hiller was just signed like a month ago itself, and so so that makes no sense itself. And Cooper, of course, he's been within Tampa Bay for a long time, and even the GM obviously came out and said that he's not going anywhere, and Cooper himself said that he doesn't want to go anywhere. So again, I think mentioned before, people just bored making up rumors itself, so I don't see that happening at all. And I think Jim Hiller's going to be at least there for at least a couple of seasons. So it's not, maybe in the future is something that they can turn to, but not anything right away. No.
Yeah, I mean, I do have an article coming out with the Hockey News that talks a little bit about coaches on the hot seat, and I actually put Jim Hiller in there because I do believe that Toronto, well, I agree with you, Vivek. I think they're going to give him some rope. Obviously, they hired him for a reason. They believe that he's the guy for that fit. But there's a lot of pressure in Toronto, much like Babcock and Edmonton, where they just give him a deal. There's a lot of pressure in Edmonton. So if that goes sideways, how long do they hang on to either one of these people, right? But to say that John Cooper is going to be the guy if Hiller, for whatever reason, doesn't make it through the season, which I'm sure that he will, but if he doesn't, why John Cooper, right? Just because, I think it was Merrick and both Greg Wyshynski of ESPN said, well, he'd like the challenge. Well, yeah, maybe, but like his contract's going to have to expire in Tampa before he even considers any of that. The Lightning clearly are not getting rid of him. And this is a coach that everybody, one, respects, and two, is keeping through the fact that Tampa Bay hasn't cleared the first round of the playoffs in forever, right? Like, they were a really, really good team. They're a very competitive team, but they have not gone very far in the playoffs, but yet they don't even blink at not letting go of John Cooper. Like, he's staying, right? So his contract's going to have to run out before he then makes a decision. Do I want to stay in Tampa? Do I want to try something else? And at that point, maybe, could he look at Toronto? Possibly, I guess. But, like, he could look at a bunch of teams, right? Yeah. And my honest thing would be maybe he looks at a team wherever Connor McDavid goes. Like, because there's such a relationship between those two that if Connor McDavid's not in Toronto, well, I don't think he's looking at Toronto. If Connor McDavid stays in Edmonton, I could see that. right? If Connor McDavid goes somewhere else, like New York, I can see Cooper in New York, right? Like all those things are going to
Oh,
come
yeah.
into a factor far before I would say, well, Cooper just wants to coach in Toronto because nobody's been able to get Toronto to the Stanley Cup final, and Cooper thinks he can do it, right? Like there's a lot of really good coaches who've gone through Toronto and not been able to do it. So yeah, to me, I don't, I think that was just an interesting topic of conversation. But it was timing, right? Like weird timing that they would have that conversation like right after Jim Hiller gets hired. So they did admit that in fairness. They're like, yeah, we do know that Jim Hiller got hired. So we'll just talk about this anyway.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with the Sidney Crosby to Montreal rumors that just seem to never die. It was Sid Sixero this time suggesting that a Michael Hagan first round pick to Pittsburgh for Crosby. For whatever reason, I guess because Crosby one time said, well, Montreal's my favorite team growing up, so now everybody's just linking him. And yes, there's a need there in Montreal. They'd love to have another center. Sure, if Crosby said, I'd like to go to Montreal, GM Ken Hughes is going to make that happen if he can, right? But Crosby has said time and time again that he is not leaving Pittsburgh, right? There'd have to be a mutual whatever here that Pittsburgh's done and Crosby's done. Now, what are our options? And that has not happened. That has never happened. He maintains that he's going to stay in Pittsburgh. It sounds like he's going to sign Josh Yoyev at the Athletics. He's probably going to sign another 1 or 2 year deal, team-friendly discount again. He's clearly not doing that if he's looking to get out of there. So that one's an interesting one to me because it just never goes away. It's just one of those things where Crosby, we know, is not probably leaving Pittsburgh. And Montreal, while they would be interested if that happened, is not in a position to trade for him. So I don't know. Kyle, is that one? Do you see Crosby ever winding up in Montreal or anywhere other than Pittsburgh?
I mean, I think he's gonna end his career there. I can't see him moving. There was the rumors about Colorado and him teaming up with McKinnon for a little bit. I think parts of last season before the deadline. So, but it's Crosby and the Penguins. That's just always been the thing, and he's always taken those team-friendly discounts. I just can't see him moving on. I think his legacy is just so embedded there, and even if the Penguins are last and terrible, I still can't really see it. So it would have to be a switch in Crosby, I think, where he goes, you know what, I really do want that one more push for another cup. But until that happens, I think he's locked in. He's staying there with Malkin until they're both done. So it seems to come up every year with this Montreal thing, and yeah, it's like you said, he brought it up. He cheered for Montreal as a kid, and that's just a thing every year. But every year someone throws out a random rumor, and this year it's 6-0 there. So
Yeah.
I can't see him leaving though. I think he's ending everything.
All right, Vivek, I'm going to leave you with the last word here. I'm going to ask you this question about the rumors we just talked about. So Crosby to Montreal, McDavid to either Philly, Detroit, or New York, or Cooper to Toronto. Of those three, knowing that probably none of them are going to happen, which is the most likely one of those three, do you think?
I would say Cooper to Toronto.
Okay.
Would be the most likely one. Um, with the sense that McDavid to either one of those teams makes absolutely no sense itself. Like we've gone through that. Crosby itself, again, like we said, that he doesn't want to leave Pittsburgh. So Cooper going to Toronto, there could be a scenario where Tampa Bay is, they're a dumpster fire straight off the season, and then Cooper gets axed, and then Hiller itself, things are not working out there, and then he gets let go. So there could be a scenario in that situation coming up for even either this year or next year as well. So I do see that as being the most likely scenario.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because that timing will have to work out, right? Because if Cooper does, for some reason, get fired in Tampa Bay, which I don't see happening, but if he does, he'll get a job the second he wants one, right? Like, the minute he's gone, he'll get a job. Now, he'll be under contract, and there's this whole, do we have permission to talk to people? But, like, I can't imagine that Tampa's going to be like, yeah, you never know. I guess Vegas did it. So, it's hard to say, right, where that will go. Kyle, which one are you picking as the most likely?
I mean, yeah, out of all those three, I'd probably agree with the Cooper to Toronto. I still don't see it being very likely. I mean, and the reasoning behind it doesn't make a lot of sense. It just because no one's done it, okay? But like, I could actually see him coming to Edmonton if McDavid's still here, because I think that would be a bigger step to get, the best player in the league he wants to play. And the Babcock, we don't even know how long Babcock signed for. He might only have a 1 year deal, kind of show me. And if things are starting off not great, or if he only has a 1 year and then, they come to Cooper and Cooper decides, yeah, that's where I want to go. I could see that happening way sooner than I could Toronto. unless McDavid goes to Toronto, like you mentioned. But of the three, that's probably the one that has the most legs, and even that's a stretch.
Sounds good. I'm with you. I do believe, though, even though I think Crosby will finish in Pittsburgh, that there is a possibility that if he decides to leave, that Montreal will be the place he goes. So,
Yeah.
in that respect, maybe. But I'm not saying anything is imminent, or I don't believe he's leaving Pittsburgh either. So it's an odd one, and there's going to be more of these, right, as the summer goes on. And what we were going to do was talk a little bit about PTOs today, but I think what we'll do is we'll save it for the next one because it's a longer topic. We're already hitting over the 30-minute mark on this show, so let's save it for the next one, and we'll have a better idea of where these PTOs are headed, who might be going where, who's still not signed, and as we get closer to the season, that'll make a little more sense to have that conversation. But Kyle, I'll let you tell everybody where they can find you if you want people to read your stuff. Where can they find you?
Yeah, so on X, my handle is kodlin15. I have a link to my author page from NHL Trade Talk, and you can find everything I write there.
Awesome. Vivek, how about you?
Same as well. So you can find me on X, v_Collier95, and I have a link to my excuse me, my author page to NHL Trade Talk and other work that I do as well.
Cool. And for those who want to find me, it's at the Jim Parsons or NHL_Trade Talk is our official website Twitter handle, so you can check us out there as well. Thanks, guys. This will be another good one, but we'll have fun next week talking about some PTOs and whatever happens between now and then. There's always going to be news. Even though it is a little slow right now in the dog days of the summertime, there's always something going on, so we'll have a chat then. For everybody else, thank you. You'll find us on YouTube, all your major podcast platforms, and then we'll put this on the NHLTradeTalk.com as well, and you can check it out there. So until next time, have a great night, everybody.